Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I am here finally with another Amphibia video. I know I ended the last one being like, hey, I'm gonna do more animation videos, but then college was like, nope, you don't get to do anything fun. But thankfully right now it is winter break. As a result, I have time to make content. And also Siraj here was like, let's make Amphibia content. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I wanted to do. Finally here to do a video I've been wanting to do for a very long time, which is to talk about friendships in Amphibia and discussing the different friendship perceptions, friendship relationship elements, the ways that perceptions of friendship evolve, and just this show is so complex and interesting in regards to friendship. So I'm very excited to discuss some of those elements with you today. Thank you so much for joining me, Siraj.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I just caught up with Amphibia like a month ago maybe, and I just had to talk about it with someone. And I haven't talked about animation, I feel like, in so long because I just fell out of touch with it, and then this reignited my love for it again. So I'm very excited.
YouTube, for some reason, would not get my stupid chapters to work on the last Amphibia video, which was like a very long video, and I felt kind of bad about that. Note that the breakdown will be in the video description below. But first, we're going to be discussing the more contextual elements, such as the way that each of the trio functions within friendship and understands friendship prior to arriving in Amphibia. Then we're going to be discussing evolution of the characters in terms of friendship, relationships, and environmental impact in terms of friendship. And then we're going to be discussing what that will mean for each of the three characters, how will their experiences in the show impact them in the future. Before we get into the specific categories, is there any specific thoughts you have in regards to friendship and Amphibia?
I guess just one thing that I look for in relationships and shows is what they can teach me about what I should expect in relationships. And with Amphibia, the main relationship I feel is Sprig and Anne, and just how supportive it is. It really tells me what I want in a relationship, a friendship. Okay, for example, Froggy Little Christmas, just he made this cute little doll for her, and it was see, that's supposed to be like he was embarrassed about it, but I was just their dynamic is just that's so normal for them. And I'm that's what I want to, just to be comfortable with doing cute things like that, just being so supportive of each other. That's what I want, and I feel that's what I appreciate so much about that relationship.
I think with the way that this show does touch on the messier elements of friendship, it's not afraid to be raw like that. Even with the good elements of friendship, it is willing to be so raw and genuine and open in regards to every aspect. Starting with Anne, we really do see the impact that Sasha has on her perception of friendship. And we get this really right off the bat with her interactions with Sprig in the first episode. We see immediately the impact that that's had in terms of what expectations she set for herself in regards to friendship, being if your friend wants this, you give it to them. If your friend wants you to do this, you do it for them. This is the expectations that she believes are necessary to retain friendship. If you don't do that, you're not a good friend to me, because that's just the environment she's been in with Sasha, in terms of both the idea that she's pushed on Anne of what she owes to her, as well as the idea in general of what Anne should expect from friends in return. It really goes deep. She doesn't just feel bullied by Sasha or controlled by Sasha. There is a connection there in some capacity. So that's what makes that feedback loop so devastating in a way, because you have this person in your life, you're yeah, they're my friend, and you have this idea of what friendship entails. And so I think her coming to terms with that throughout the show is really, I guess we all want the best out of our relationships, and to realize even if I may have noticed that these things were making me uncomfortable, to realize more and more that this isn't okay is really sad.
That is one of the hardest things to deal with, I think, having a childhood friend, and then you notice some things about it, the friendship, and you're you don't want to say anything about it just because it's such a big part of your life, and you don't want to mess with it at all because you're so scared of losing it in any way. So I think that's just crazy that the show is discussing that.
It's interesting how she seems to have understanding of it, but her walls and her way of perceiving it still come up over and over, not only in terms of the peer pressure, but because also I'll phrase it like she looks up to her in a way, I feel like, because she does note that in the third temple, like she looks up to Sasha in the way that Sasha does stand up for people and does take control of the situation, despite the fact that she's still like, when she's treating the planners like she is in the beginning, she's just like, oh yeah, classic Sasha, right? That's just how Sasha rolls. And so she still like brushes it off as like normalized, even after spending all of that time in Wyrwood. As soon as she's back in the presence of Sasha, she like flips right back there and she's like, all right, this is just the person in my life. This is how they understand things, and this is how I need to function within this relationship for it to work. And I noted like risk versus reward. There's like one communication theory I talked about in my comm class in regards to like how a relationship functions in terms of like risk versus reward, and can function the relationship in a way that's like, oh, if I do this, then I'll get the reward of her approval and her friendship, even though it's taking the risk of doing things I might not be comfortable with. As a communication major, Amphibia, I've used a lot of examples from Amphibia in my comm major, so that just really goes to show what the show does. Do you have any other thoughts about Anne's like background in regards to her friendship prior to coming to Amphibia, and even maybe a bit into the show, how those elements come up again?
I think just how uncomfortable she was, like you can see with stealing music box, and just after that when she's telling Sprig like this is what friends are, like just her like facial expressions too, like you can just tell like this is what she thinks friendship is right now, where like you can be totally uncomfortable with what you're doing, but just because they're your friend you have to do it. And that's just like where we're starting off of. And it's just like I love seeing how the show like unpacks that as it goes on, where like that's no longer what she expects of friendship. And I think that's just like so important. I've experienced that a lot too with like childhood friends and like people I've been friends with for a long time, where like there's things that they do that are like like raising red flags for me, but I'm like I don't want to touch this friendship at all because I don't want to lose it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that like so cool that the show showed that like you can make new friends too, like with Sprig, and it'll be just as meaningful. Like you don't have to keep your friends just because they're your childhood friends. Like you can
Mm-hmm.
grow and become, you can just progress too. Like you can grow out of friends. And that's just like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a hard thing to do, but I love that the show showed a healthy way to do it where you can still be happy kind of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's like interesting that you bring that up, because when we look into Marcy, I think it's interesting how you have like the more socially awkward, more in her own hobbies, more like nerding out character. You have her be more of the one who has more agency in terms of like keeping the friendship together in terms of that action, because like both of them seem to want to get Sasha's approval, yet Marcy seems more willing to take certain actions to retain the friendship beyond. Anne is just like, okay, I'll do what you want. Marcy seems to even take that to another level of like, okay, so I will do that, but also I think these other things need to occur in order for us to remain friends. Like even beyond just putting them in Amphibia, I think there's a lot more. She's dealing with some serious separation anxiety, some serious fear of being alone, some serious belief that a friendship needs to retain no matter what happens, no matter what takes place, no matter how many fractures there are. We are friends forever, like as she notes in the dinner. She's like, we're friends for life. This is like what we're supposed to do. And that's just like so devastating to see, because it's important for her on a personal level. But as we just discussed with Anne, it might grow even beyond a personal level and grow into a relationship level because of how those two have just really come to believe that like friendship needs to function. Or even as you said, we can even believe that in our daily lives, like as we contextualize fiction into our own lives, like that can be a common thing because of that need to retain that connection. And I think because they have like such a close childhood trio, that's like so integral to them.
Yeah, I guess just her fear of losing their friendship, that is so reasonable. Like I know it's crazy like what she did too, but it's just like it makes sense to me like why she would do that.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and Hope and I both said this over and over. She is a 13-year-old kid who's dealing with some serious anxiety and about the unknown, and also in regards to, again, what she believes needs to happen for her and her friends. It isn't just about her. It's not just about her in the friendship, it's really grows beyond just her fear of being alone and into what she thinks is also best for her friends. And really does get most of that journey of working through that perception of not needing to have as much control in the friendship, whereas the other two really need to work through that more so. Because obviously with Sasha, it's very clear, but I think with Marcy to some degree it is. And while Marcy's intentions might not be as malicious as Sasha, well, they're not. They come from a much more pure place. But regardless, she still believes by making this decision, by putting them in Amphibia, this is what's best for them because it's the best way for us to stay friends. So I'm not alone, and also so they're not alone, so we're together. The most prominent example of where that goes is Day at the Aquarium, where she has to come to terms with, no, that's not what's best for Anne. What's best for Anne is to go with the planners. It's not to stay with me in this instance. Her really having to be like, whoa, step out of that perception. And then obviously Andreas immediately comes in and manipulates that, which we'll get into Andreas, and I'm prepared fully today to go on my Andreas rant again, because dear God, please don't redeem this character. You have three girls who, in the end, even with Sasha, like, while her stuff can be way more malicious, obviously, like she tries to freaking kill people, but for all three of them, it comes from a place of just wanting to hold the friendship together. That's what triggered the events of the show, and that's what's continued to progress the events of the show. Like, even though Anne has been la-di-da back on Earth, A, that doesn't stop the fact that she's still thinking about them, and B, like I said, she did have the most growth in that regard. And also, in terms of their safety, it's more of a morally gray area, but I think this is a reason why people said they want to see more Sasha, because giving them that space is that time, because I think it's important for people to understand, yeah, they're friends, but they also just went through a lot of rough stuff. And not only do Sasha and Marcy have to process that, but Anne does too. No matter how much she cares about them, there's still a sensitive spot there where thinking about that and coming to terms with that and even taking action in regards to it is going to be a bit difficult because of what just took place.
Yeah, and I think I do want to see more Sasha, even though we did get that one mini episode in the beginning of season 3. I want a lot more just of Sasha.
My main feedback from season 3, I'm like, I'm fine with all the wacky adventures with Anne, but I think we just need a bit more with her. Especially because if we theoretically say, all of a sudden, Anne's here. Oh no, Sasha, let's make up. Like that, yeah, we got an episode, but that would still feel so out of place. And I trust this show because of what I've seen it do. I have a belief that it wouldn't just immediately do something like that. Out of every show I've watched, I trust it a bit more, especially because as we're talking about friendship today, that's like its main overarching like story element. And so I trust that a bit more, but I still think like as we get into talking about Sasha, especially with the potential bomb that was dropped at the end of the last episode, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff that you can touch on. Miss Waybright, say hi to your parents for me. Oh boy. So not only does Sasha go in with the belief that controlling the situation will dictate what's best for the friendship, this girl might have a little bit extra baggage, similar to Marcy, have more of a drive of not wanting to lose people and keep people together, because we got a little hint in the episode that either Sasha's parents are divorced or they're living apart. That's definitely going to come into the friendship. What are your thoughts about like Sasha, the way she treats friendship?
Yeah, I mean, it does give context to a lot of the decisions she makes and just her character since I'm doing this show. Because we do get to see when she's a kid. I don't know, she just seems different, kind of. And I think just that situation, we can assume she had very little control of and she felt very helpless.
Mm-hmm.
And she just wants to make sure that she doesn't feel like that ever again, and that she can keep the family she has together with Marcy and Anne together. Like that's another family she has, and she wants to make sure that one doesn't break up. I think that's just something that comes with having or possibly having separated or divorced.
I think everybody just really hangs on to that line and that she says to Anna, like, say hi to your parents for me. Cause like that line is now, it's not just her being like, oh, have fun at home, go say hi to your parents. It's also, here you are getting these relationships. Not only do you have parents that are together, here you are with your frog family right in front of me, choosing them over me again, despite when I've tried to prove to you that my intentions are trying to do what's best for you, and you're still picking this other relationship. Like, she's losing that again. Like, and I think in that moment, because Anne specifically says, like, no, I'm putting my foot down, I'm not going to stay friends with you, that really pushes her to be like, whoa, okay, so you really just are getting all of the luck in terms of relationships. And I think that's another reason I want to see her, because I think it's not just regret in terms of her actions in the friendship. That would do a huge blow to my self-esteem. And because it's not just, oh, I failed in this relationship, but it's like, oh, maybe I'm failing in all relationships. Like, oh my gosh, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the reason why these people don't want to stay with me. And that's what really can like help spark that growth, and not just in terms of her friendship, as we talked about getting more individual episodes with her, but in terms of her personal growth. I think that's like really important.
Yeah, and I think even in the one Sasha episode we got in season 3, where Grime is saying he's gonna go to the Toad Army and like kind of leave, and then she's like, I'm gonna stay and protect the town. I think that's a big moment for her too, where she's choosing to do what she thinks is right over maintaining a relationship, and she might lose that just by staying. And I think that's a big moment for her too.
Let's get into discussing those relationships. Is when Percy and Braddock leave. That's another instance of a relationship she's formed, losing that. And also in that instance, we do again see like, oh, we're winning the war. Like, look how far we've come. Look how much we've accomplished together. Not only is it keeping a friendship together in terms of what she believes is best for the friendship, but also like, look how much we can do together. You also see the impact that has on Marcy, because even Marcy's saying that in True Colors. It grows beyond the friendship itself and turns into what we've done as friends can help prove how valuable this relationship is. Thus, you shouldn't leave me. And also because in that episode, she does hear that Marcy and Anne are working together again without her. So that touches a spot for her where she's like, this is becoming really real for me, because here I am alone. They're getting by without me. And now here are these people who I thought I was working alongside and getting along with, and we were getting through situations alongside, are leaving me too.
Honestly, another moment like that, I think that's like not exactly explicitly shown, but it's like in True Colors when Andrews is holding Sprig and about to drop him, and then Anne says he's my best friend in this world or any other. I just always think about what effect that line would have had on Marcy and Sasha, and like talking about Sasha right now. So I'm just like wondering, because there's this meme I think Matt Braley retweeted where it was like Sprig was in the front seat and like Sasha was in like the back seat and choosing Sprig over them, and I just thought like, I wonder how that affects Sasha.
Yeah, because like going back to Day of the Aquarium, like we definitely know in terms of Marcy that impacts her, because again, it's another instance of how she's choosing them over me. And obviously she knows what she just did. And we see how that impacts her when we get to Olivia and Yunnan. For someone with separation anxiety, like that's her idea of things in Olivia and Yunnan, where it goes beyond a fear of them abandoning her, but also a feeling that like, oh, that's completely over. She did just see Anne say to Sasha, I'm not going to be friends with you anymore. She saw that with her own eyes and she tried to stop it, and Anne didn't let her. So she knows Anne's capable of doing that to her. Like for all three of them, that was a moment where they saw one of them could put their foot down and just say, okay, things are over. Because like you got elements of that with Sasha prior, where Sasha would be like, do this now for me, or you're going to face the consequences, but they never saw the following through until that moment. So I think that was really hard for all three of them. And then in terms of what you brought up with Sasha, similar to Marcy with Day of the Aquarium, we have past episodes of Sasha seeing just how important that relationship with Sprig is, and also how Sprig was the catalyst in Anne taking a step back from her relationship with Sasha. So that is going to be a complex thing for her. So I know we only have like half a season left or whatever, but like I definitely want to see not only her communicate with Anne, but also communicate with Sprig. Like I think that could be really important. So in terms of the specific relationships, for Anne, I think it's like interesting. I was thinking about it more and more yesterday, which it's not only the specific people, but it's also the environment. Like the environment really does change that friendship. Anne is in an environment where she's like surrounded by people who push her to recognize her more selfish attributes, and who also are there for her more genuinely in terms of her friendship and helping her come to new understandings in regards to friendship. And the relationships she makes there are loving and caring and foster good values. Meanwhile, Sasha, not only does she get a potential father figure, which we learned just how integral that is following the last episode we got, but she also gets someone who both enables her as well as challenges her. I think that's what's so complex about Grime, because we see him in the beginning enabling her behavior, but we also see him in Toadcatcher being like, you're not mad because you lost the fight. You're mad and sad because you lost your friend. And so it's not only a relationship that just enables, but it's also a relationship that challenges her. So Sasha's also put in like that hard, rough exterior, military-esque behavior, like environment that like really enables that as well. And then Marcy is put in her dream, fostering relationships, her dream of growing beyond what her friends are with, but also having her friends there by her side. Obviously, when we continue to discuss these, we'll get more into what happens, but that definitely plays into Marcy's belief that this is like the right decision, because here we are in my dream world with my friends. And so let's start with Anne, because you actually joined because you wanted to talk more about Anne and Sprig. So what are your thoughts in regards to Anne's friendships in Amphibia?
Okay, well, this is not Anne and Sprig, but I just rewatched the one where Anne and Wally search for the Moss Man recently. And that's just, I think, an example where she's exposed to a different kind of friendship than she's kind of expecting friendship to be. If that makes sense at all.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the big moment for her too, where she's like, this guy who's like the town outcast can be my friend, and we can just like have so much fun together. I think that's like so cool for her to realize that friendship can take so many different forms than just the one she expects from her trio that she's just grown so comfortable in, I guess. For Anne and Sprig, I also rewatched the one where they have to be roommate. Well, they choose to be roommates. That's a big episode for them too, because she expects it to go perfectly. Like they're gonna have like the best roommate experience, and it's gonna be so ideal, and it's not at all. But then Pop at the end is like, I think you guys are best friends than you were before this happened, because a big part of being friends is being honest with each other. And I think that's a big moment for her too, where that's going to be a core part of their relationship. And
yeah, and that again gets is like the messy elements of it, which is important to realize. Some shows, if you have like that main best friend relationship, yeah, there might be some fights, but there's not that place where it's like you're still really good friends, and actually this messiness, it'll make your friendship stronger. A lot of the times that negativity can commonly be contextualized as, nope, it's just bad, we just need to apologize for it and move beyond it. But in this instance, it's really like, no, this is an important part of our bond. We don't need to move past it. We need to recognize it and take it into account into our future as friends. And I think that's like really important, as you said. And also in terms of the messiness, that shows to her again that things don't have to be perfect, because like again, like as we've been discussing with all three of them, it's that perception of what is best. Can I prove to my friends like what's best? And then we even see with Spring that like that's just such a common thing for like some for us in our relationships, because again, we do want those relationships to work out. Unless you're really confident, you're often going to default to the what will get me through this situation, where there's the most assurance in the outcome that we're still going to be okay. I definitely think it's so important that they heard that from Hop Pop about like, no, it doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be okay. You don't need to be sad about this. This is actually good for your relationship, because if you weren't honest with each other, or if you didn't go through a more challenging experience, then you wouldn't have that better understanding of each other in that genuine nature. I think that's what really does aid in what we see later with what Anne passes on to others and onto her perceptions of friendship in the future. Because I keep coming back to the scene where he stands up for her in Reunion. Do you have any other thoughts in regards to that, how their friendship is built up to that point?
Can you remind me about that scene a little bit?
Sasha is pretty much saying, are you really going to risk your lives for these talking frogs? We don't belong here. We should go back home. You just need to put your sword down right now. She does the glare. And then Sprig's like, you don't know her. This isn't what's right for her. Like, she's not going to be pushed around by a bully like you. She's kind, smart. She names off like all the amazing qualities that Anne has. And as a friend, he calls Sasha out for being a bully in that instance and trying to control Anne. So he just really calls out like both the toxicity that Sasha is using in that instance, as well as the strengths of Anne. So I think that's really important for them.
Yeah, I think just in season 1, they just learn from each other so much and just like gain so many positive things from each other in season 1, where they're like just getting to know each other and just like becoming best friends. They just see so much good in each other, and I love that he just stands up for her in that moment and is like, this is who she is, and he's not gonna like let anyone talk down to her like that. I just love that support. There's like so much support in the relationship. I love that.
Yeah, definitely, like the fact that, like you said, that he does stand up, and I think that's like such a strength of him, because if you are someone who's either more shy or has more insecurity in a relationship, to have those friends that are there for you who can help you in that situation, stand up for you, like that can be so important. I know with some messy stuff I've gone through, that having friends there who could support me and stand up for me in that instance was so important. It goes to show a lot about the strength of their relationship when here you have, obviously there's a lot of toxicity in it, but here you have this friendship that she's had since they were kindergartners. Here you have this very, very, very long lasting relationship. And this person challenging that relationship is so important to her. So I think that really goes to show the strength of their relationship and how much she trusts that he can help see that. Because like going back to the episode we just talked about, again, it's that instance of being able to call out the bad in the situation, being able to call out some of the messier things that exist in a relationship. And again, both of them being open to that. And I think that's something that both Marcy and Sasha have to come to terms with. Not everything will always work out. You can't always have control, and you can't always have the perfect friendship. Everyone's together and happy. Like there's gonna be bumps in the road, and the relationship can become even stronger by recognizing that. Any other thoughts about Anne's friendships in Amphibia?
I think also just if we're talking about the environment too, just Wartwood, just that's where she starts out, is such a big deal too, just because of everyone in that town and how, again, supportive they are. Like I'm thinking of the episode where they come back from Utopia the first time, and then the planners basically like mess up the whole town, but then the whole town's like, no, that's who you guys are, and like this is our town, like we love it. And I'm like, I think just Anne also getting to be in this town where everyone's allowed to mess up, that everyone like helps each other and supports each other, I think that's such a big deal too.
I think that's like one of the biggest things. We're kind of like picking out all like the major things. And I think that, again, acknowledging the messiness, messing up. That's why I think this show is so raw and so genuine, and why, as we talked about even before recording this, like why it impacts you in that way it does, how deep and genuine and raw it is. Because again, here you have another instance of, oh, I'm messing up. You messed up, but we'll learn to grow from it. We'll grow from it. We'll work through things together, and we'll still be there for you. We see that with Anne. We see that with Marcy. The Warwoodians are really like, we'll recognize your flaws, but that's not going to deter us from friendship with you. And going back to like the beginning, that's just so integral for Anne. And again, when we see how Sasha and Marcy perceive that, that's another critical element of why they don't perceive it the same way. Because Anne's been in an environment where she's been able to mess up, but it hasn't jeopardized her relationships. Whereas she came into with that perception that, oh, if your friend doesn't do this, they can't be friends with you. Like the fact that these three lived, or two more so, but they lived in this friendship where they believe if they made one mistake, it could jeopardize everything. And I feel like that's an element of Marcy's decision too. Sasha would blame her for leaving. I mean, and to some level, I do agree she blamed the parents, especially because of her background with divorce. But I believe there would be some part of her that's like, you should be able to stay. Haven't I taught you to like put your foot down and be that? Because like she seems like, as we see with Anne, she seemingly pushes that mentality that, oh, not only can I do this, but you can do it too. You can have that control. And also just that perception that by her leaving, she's not as like, in their eyes, not as loyal to the friendship. So she could believe, oh, that could be a justification in her mind over and over. I feel like this, I need to prove, I'm just proving that I'm loyal to this friendship. Look at how much you've both grown. Look at this. I gave you everything. Like, it's not just what I'm doing for myself. This is what I'm doing for both of you because of how much I care about both of you. And so I feel like that really comes to be a justification. I'm going to go on a long rant about Andreas. So do you have any thoughts about any of like because we don't even just have to talk about Andreas, because like obviously Marcy's in an environment where she does, I know we mostly focus on Andreas because like that's the clearest like tie, but any other thoughts about like Marcy's relationships, even her perceptions of friendship being in that environment?
Yeah, I think I'm looking at that outline and the part that says what is owed. Like you're saying kind of her justification where she thinks because she got them to Amphibia, she thinks like they owe her kind of um their friendship, and just like not calling each other out and like just being the perfect friends and stuff. And I think that's like a big thing for her that maybe this environment has done to her, where she expects if she's done something for her friends that they didn't even ask for and that they might not even have wanted, they should reciprocate in some way. Yeah.
Even her actions in New Wartwood, where she again is trying to do what's best to get approval. That is such a big part of it. I feel like, no, Anne, I can't just sit back and let these relationships foster. By building all these things that will earn me and garner me that friendship. Like that's what I need to do to get these relationships to form. And I think, like you said, like that aspect of like owing in that instance where she does say that to Anne, she's like, look at Sprig, I gave you this, I gave you everything. Her monologue is so interesting because she starts out being like, I didn't want us to be alone. I didn't want us to be separated. Your birthday, they were gonna like take me away. I found a place where we could all be together. Then when she sees Sasha walk away and Anne's like, I was missing all of the things back home, she kind of switches gears and's like, but look what you've gained here. Look at the friendships you've made. Look at how much you guys have grown. Here's all the things I gave you. It's so sad that she feels the need to justify that level, and she can't just be like, oh, because like she does have that fear of being alone. She's willing to do anything in that instance to justify her actions and to cling on to that relationship. Because like, as I said again, not only just saw Anne tell Sasha she wouldn't be friends with her, but getting into the Andreas rant, she literally was just stabbed in the back by like the one main connection she made in Amphibia, and who just took advantage of everything she divulged. When she was vulnerable, he took advantage of that. And it's clear as day that he did, because he's like, okay, if you want to tell the truth, I will. I'm going to use this to my advantage and tear you guys apart. Oh, God, Marcy, I love you so much. It's so devastating that this like poor 13-year-old girl, she just wants her friends. She goes to such lengths to keep that simply for the reason, like she doesn't want to control. She doesn't need the control. She uses it as an avenue to attempt to retain the friendship, because that's what she saw worked with Sasha. So that's what she still believes can work for herself. That's why I think it's really important for Sasha and Marcy to, oh my God, I can't believe we only have half a season left. These poor girls. And that's why when we get into talking about the future, I think it'll be so interesting, because like even outside of what we see in the show, I think there's a lot that they need to work through. in terms of that understanding, again, that things don't need to be perfect. Mercy.
Um, I know. I just want to say, like, after Andrews's betrayal, like, I feel like she's just gonna be so not open about what she's actually feeling.
Yeah.
She hasn't
Uh-huh.
been. I think in season 3B, I really want to see her that undoing of that because it's just so that's so sad that she's not gonna tell her friends who she like wants to be together for so long for
Mhm.
like ever like what she's actually feeling and she hasn't like before Amphibia and during Amphibia like I just want to see her realize that she can tell them what she's actually feeling and what she's going through.
Not only that, but also here's someone who would need to have more understanding about, oh, you can form bonds outside of the trio, but look what just happened to her. How is she going to have any confidence in forming relationships outside of the trio after what happened? Not only is she losing her friends in that instance, but she's losing like the only connection she made outside of that friendship. So that's going to really put her in a place where she, in an instance, clings even more onto it. What do we see in Olivia and Unam? We see her biggest like fear is them not forgiving her. That's still the relationship she values the most and the one she's the most confident in, and also the one she's so desperate to repair. Those will be the people she's been with the longest. She just saw what happened when she opened herself up to someone else, and it did not work out for her. And like you said, being open at all, that's going to be hard too in the recovery process. Like obviously she's, first time I have to say it out loud, she's possessed right now. So that'll be interesting to see how that will come into play. Obviously, we don't know. Mercy's fate's the most up in the air right now in terms of when we talk about their futures, but that's obviously like two elements of it is both being willing to be open and being willing to trust in connections. Because I even have to remind myself this over and over. There will be people in your life who will like stab you in the back or who won't be there for you in the ways that you believe they were. But that doesn't mean that every relationship will be that way. All right, let's talk a bit more about Sasha. Grimes both an enabler and a pusher. Obviously, in the beginning, it's a lot of enablement. And I think in terms of like we talk about their growth, like at least Marcy to some degree was making a friendship outside the trio. So for her, she was still seemingly making more progress in the beginning than did Sasha. But I go back to her line in Turning Point and how she's like, when I saw the consequences of like what happened, that's what really shifted my view. Because obviously she has people verbally calling her out, but she's so to the point that that doesn't justify in her eyes what's best. Because like again, that aspect of control and being able to control the situation. And here she was when she tried to have control in the situation, and it led to she saw what happened to Marcy. That's a better way of phrasing it. And and then she also saw Anne say she wouldn't be friends with her anymore. Obviously, if she hadn't done anything, stuff would have still happened, but Anne probably would have trusted her in that instance. Like there would have been, she lost trust with Anne. She lost her other friend. And also like that's a big element of it, like the trust with Anne, seeing that her actions just really shattered that to the degree that it did, and how that not only impacted their relationship but the situation as a whole. What are your thoughts about like Sasha's friendships in Amphibia / just like how that impacts her perceptions of friendship?
She just keeps losing people from her trying to assert control and not listening to them at all. Like I think she's learning that just keeps losing people when she doesn't listen to what their needs are and what they actually want. And she's just listening to herself kind of. I think she's finally realizing that. And I think when the reunion ultimately happens, I think she will at least start to listen to them somewhat.
Mhm.
I'm excited to see how that looks.
Yeah, I still think there's a lot that we need to see from her because we've seen her take ownership in terms of her actions, but like you said, there's still that element of stepping back more. And I think she's gonna get that to some degree with letting the wording step up a bit more, but she still seems like she's going to be a very much a leader in that instance. Like you said, there's definitely going to need to be some other side to that where we need to see more from her of stepping back a bit more. Because like even everyone in the fandom's like, oh yeah, she's going to lead the rebellion, and I'm like, Yeah, but also, as you just said, an important part for her will not only be leading with a new understanding of needing less control, but like obviously giving up more of that control. I have a feeling Darcy's gonna be like one of those like, let me just call out all your terribleness. Like I think back to like Zontiri just like picking up Cass and being like, here's how you freaking like were terrible and screwed up. Like I totally see Darcy being like that and just calling out all those flaws. So I definitely think like that can be a catalyst. But I'm also hoping, like as you said, even with just like Anne and Marcy separate from hearing it, because she doesn't need to just hear it, but like because like something so powerful in that scene was she was alone. She didn't have anyone else with her in that scene with the journal. She was all alone, and she was the one on her own who was like, I messed up, let me go do something about it. So messy and complicated because of Darcy, and I don't know what's gonna happen. Like I guess in some instances, like Zontiri or something, like we do get it in like a few episodes. So I know they can do something like that in a limited time frame, but like, oh boy, we really have a limited time frame to
Yeah,
get through a
I
lot.
was thinking too, because is it 11 episodes? Or something around there, like
Yeah.
10, 11, and that's like very little time. And
Mhm.
there's so much that needs to happen, and it's crazy. But like you said, it's been done before, and this show can do it. I believe in it.
I believe in
Uh,
it.
yeah, but I
And
didn't
now
think
we
about
do.
that Darcy would be that kind of villain, and now I'm scared because
I
like that's gonna hurt.
it's like she just seems to have that mentality, I guess, where it's gonna be like, I know what's right. I'm the one who will control like everything. Like, and it'll be interesting to see like how that exploits the vulnerabilities for each of them. And I think, and also because like I know some people have said Marcy's somehow going to still regain some control. That's what I just saw. I don't know how much Marcy will be there, but I'm wondering how much Marcy would be able to fight something like that, because it seems like such a concrete possession where I'm like, I don't know how much Marcy is still there. Because like commonly with these, like with someone like Katra, or there, I know there's more possessions that exist in animation that I just can't think of. We see like the person try to reach out to them and say like, oh, you're still there, I know you're still there. And I'm wondering if in this instance they're gonna try to go down that route but then realize how gone she is. That'll be devastating for them if they just realize how gone she is in that instance. And I will hold on to hope that we're still gonna get her back, but I think that would just be so devastating if you have that term where it's like, nope, it's not like a similar possession where it's like, oh, you're there, I see you, but like it's actually like no full blown like, oh my god, we have to work through this without her there. And I think having someone who can call out BS like Darcy could, like even something like we all joke about how Anne's just Lottie dying. She could be like, Anne, you were Lottie dying, and look what happened to your friend. You were off like partying on Earth, and look what happened to your friend. Like, look at me, look what happened while you were gone, and then like look at that invest with crying with a sword in the corner. Like, look what you did. So I think that's gonna. And then like Anne in that instance, as we talked about, going back way to the beginning, and can be like, okay, I might not have been here, but you had this, like being able to sure deal with some of the angst of that, but then also being able to recognize the messiness again, recognize, yeah, I may have made some mistakes, like kind of similar how she does in the second temple. Like, yeah, I may have made some mistakes, but in the end, like you're just as responsible. I'm going to do everything in my power to obviously to get my friend back, but I'm not going to live by the belief that I am the one at fault for everything. Like, I think that's important because, like, yeah, she's been Lottie dying on Earth, but like again, going back to what I said earlier, the friendships are messy for her right now. B, she does have these close relationships with the planters, and C, guys, she's trying. You saw her. She wasn't sleeping. She was like on a laptop all night. She was trying to get to the museum at all costs, like paying people off to get there. She clearly still cares. She clearly still wants to get back. And we see finally with the letter, like I know for most part, it was acknowledged as to get the planners back. But I think with the letter scene, it really shows to us that she might have kept it to herself more, but she was always thinking of them. It's just in that instance with the holidays and being like, oh, being with family, like hearing all those, like, oh, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're with us. Hearing all that, it reminded her of, oh, not only am I not back with them and I can't save them, but like the people in their lives are impacted by it too, by not having them in their lives. No, I'm so worried.
Yeah. And I think just with if Darcy ends up blaming Anne all, I think that should just be a moment where all three of them acknowledge that this is a complicated situation and it's
Exactly.
not her
Yeah.
fault. And then like the messiness again, we keep going back to that. Like it's not as clear cut as oh it's Marcy's fault for sending us to Amphibia or Sasha's
Yeah.
fault for keeping or something. Like I want them to acknowledge that. And then also about the future with how they'll resolve the whole Darcy situation. I'm just scared because just from like some theory videos I've watched and just like from the show, it seems like there are like 9 other beings in the core. And
I can't do it when these possessions use the same voice actress because you know it's the same person. You know it's the same person, and I'm like, dang it! I know she's still there, and it's painful, and I don't know why.
yeah.
One of the main central questions people are asking is, will the trio still be friends following Amphibia? I think from our discussion, what we've polled is they will, recognizing that relationships will be messy, but that doesn't mean we have to walk away from them. And I think, for me at least, it would feel very counteractive if they were like, okay, yeah, it's messy, so we have to walk away from each other permanently. I think that kind of goes against what we've been discussing in a way, because the important part of that is being like, okay, yeah, it's messy. Yeah, I might need a Zoom call you, Marcy, but I'm still going to talk to you via Zoom. Like, I think an important thing for her to hear is like, Marcy, just because we won't be in the same place, like just because you won't be here in California, doesn't mean we're going to stop being friends with you. We can still talk to you. We can still visit you. You can still visit us. Like, and then for Sasha, like, again, it's like that recognition is like, yeah, you made some mistakes. We have a lot of work to do on our relationship, but you've shown me that like you're willing to make sacrifices to work to right your wrongs, and also just like to step up to care for the audience. Like the people you thought I walked away from you from, perceived to be the reason our friendship fell apart, you stood up for these people. You made sure their safety came first before your own. And to me, that shows that you're both willing to work on our friendship, but you're also willing to be there for others beyond an element of control. And also, like we talked about, you're willing to like give others control too. Like being able to see that like she's willing to work with them and be there for them is, I think, a very important thing. Because like we talk about all the time, like someone like Sprig, like she can be very mad at Sprig in some instances. And I think like seeing her step up for those who did mess up the friendship in a way, just in her eyes, will be important. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot too. Like at the end of the show, like what will be the status of their friendship? And I'm kind of like, I was interested in seeing if the show would go the route of you can grow out of toxic friendships, but then at the same time, I kind of want to see Sasha say that like you don't have to be my friend anymore, and then Anne makes the choice because I think
Yes.
that's really
Yes.
important. They don't have to be friends, but they choose to be because they've learned and they've made mistakes, but they've learned from them. I think that's what's important. I think will happen.
Yeah, I think both of them would audibly acknowledge. I think Sasha would be like, you shouldn't be my friend. Like, look at what I've done. And then Marcy, on the other hand, will also be like, I tried so hard to keep us together, but if that's not what you want, or even because like she's already blaming herself and feeling like they're not going to forgive her, so I feel like she'll already be saying that, and like that goes back to like how much is she willing to share, but I feel like that will come out in some capacity, feeling like I tried so hard to keep us together. I think that's going to be a lot for her. We'll be like, I tried so hard to keep us together, and you guys clearly don't want to be with me, and then they have to be like, we want to be with you, but at the same time, we can't trap each other. In other words, like things might not work out, and that's what you need to be okay with. Or we might not always be 100% together, but that doesn't mean we're going to have to grow apart. But I definitely love what you acknowledged about like, even if they do remain friends, it is important that they do reach that level of being like, we screwed up. We might not be friends. Like actually acknowledging that and being like, whoa, maybe we shouldn't be friends anymore. Like that is definitely such an important part of that recovery, because that is really digging to the core of recognizing the toxicity. Please don't redeem Andreas. I don't want to redeem. I just want to put that out there because it's like the one thing I'm driving pre-season 3B, and I'm like, I don't want to see him redeem. I don't.
With all
I don't.
that's going on, I don't think that's a good idea.
His freaking look when she was getting possessed, I'm like, no, this man is not getting redeemed. Stop it.
He might make a sacrifice.
He's trying to kill 13-year-olds multiple times. After what he did to Marcy, no, he's never getting redeemed in my book. No, he does not deserve my sympathy. No.
Definitely not.
That's where I'm leaving it. That's where Okay, any other thoughts about friendship in Amphibia?
Okay, one thing that's been on my mind is the end. There might not be a way for Anne to go back to Amphibia, so that could mean her friendship with Sprig will be very different. I'm wondering how that will be.
That will make me cry. I will cry if they can't.
I'm leaning towards they're going to destroy the Calamity Box, which means there will be no way back. But at the same time, I feel like there needs to be some loophole where they can still communicate.
Are they going to pull a Star versus the Forces of Evil? I swear. I'm joking.
No, I literally thought about that. Just like, please. I don't think so.
I don't think so. Because a lot of people have said the opposite will happen and she'll be separated from the other two. And I'm like,
because just for the sake of the fantasy aspect not interrupting the actual like themes of the show, I feel like I think she'll have to stay on Earth.
So let's just set up some cellular data in Amphibia so they can at least watch that. I'm joking, I don't know. It would actually be bold if they like didn't destroy the box, I feel like. In some like because that just feels like such a common out in like these kinds of shows, like just destroy the major artifact. We have to remember, like, in Amphibia, we've had a lot of emphasis not only on the trio, but the trio with Andreas. That's why I was like, would they pull a Star versus the Forces of Evil? Because I'm like, they're paralleling each other. Because you have like those parallels where it's like Andreas apparently went through something similar where he was like, was loyal to friends. They took advantage of it. Took advantage of it. I am not defending King Andreas here. In his eyes, they took advantage of it. And so, and it's also like, because we still don't quite know like what happened to Pink Frog or what happened with the box. So I'm like, I'm trying to connect the dots in relation to, as we talk about friendship, the friendship that was shown with like Andreas and the Amphibia friendship, and then the One World friendship, which is why I think about like those cross connections. In the same way, I believe the Calamity trio separating would go against some of the themes. Them being completely separated would feel strange. Partially separated, sure, like, okay, it's again goes back to the messy things we're always not gonna be 100% together, but I feel like it's completely separating, especially with all the unless they're just doing all this stuff in season 3 to break us more. With all the buildup they've done in season 3 with that friendship, I don't know how it would work, but I feel like there's got to be some way there's got to be some way they're gonna at least be able to communicate with each other, at least in some capacity.
Because I remember Terry was saying that they're gonna help them make a portal. I
don't
know where that's gonna go.
I don't want the sacrifice to have to be from Sprig's side, because Sprig has just been the one who's been so loyal, and like out of all characters to sacrifice that would feel, I can't handle Marcy or Sprig. It's like just with the invasion is what I'm thinking about. And like, even if we got Andreas on our side, we don't have to redeem him, got him on our side, like I feel like Darcy would still have so much control. Well, it's just like you gotta get the factors out. You gotta get Marcy away from Darcy, and you gotta get Andreas. Everyone else just seems to be doing their jobs because Andreas is making them do their jobs. I think like with the mix with the core, we have friendship, the trio friendship with the Calamity powers. I think there's a lot we have yet to see with like, and I'm gonna go do it again. I am not complaining about what we've gotten so far, but I do think maybe a little bit more balance in the beginning could have, between the Wartwood stuff and the Earth stuff, could have helped just a tiny bit more.
The second half is going to be so packed because of
how...
Wow. I really enjoyed the first half. Like that's like some of my favorite parts of the show. But then now that I've heard other people talk about it, I'm like, wow, that was very not spread out between the different storylines.
Especially because we're gonna have a lot of overlap now, I feel like, because like the more Andreas gets to Earth now, the more overlap there'll be, like we're in the same location and less separation. And like we talked about earlier, I feel like the separation was important for Sasha to be alone in recognizing everything. So maybe it was just like at least one more Sasha episode would have made me a bit happier. But like you said, I still loved what we got, not hating on it at all. I'm just saying this second half of the season is going to feel very packed, and that's why in my notes I was like, I think talking about this future of the friendship, it's not just for the show itself, but it's in the fictional universe beyond the show, pretending this is a story that would continue after the show is over, because that's how I like to view fiction, because fiction is very important to me, and that's what fanfic is for. But like just thinking of it beyond that, because like no matter how much I think they're going to pack in, obviously they couldn't do everything.
I just need the second half of season 3 right now.
Something I talked about with Hope when we talked about season 2, I liked how even when the trio became more integral to the story, they didn't forget how important all of the Warwoodians were and all the other characters were. And it's important that we had these kind of episodes because it shows that they still cared about that relationship and it strengthened it. I think some people have been a bit too hard on season 3A. Like, I get it. Like I said earlier, it would have been maybe a bit more helpful to see another Sasha episode or something else. But I still think season 3A will be strong in terms of that relationship in the future. Two scenes I want to bring up really quick. The third temple, that whole sequence is important because no matter how much Sasha is pretending in portions of that, it's still a really integral scene for both of them to have Sasha audibly even if she's, and I'm going to say she's genuine and being like, I know that I've been controlling you all these years, like saying, I know. She seems so emotion-filled and genuine in the moments. And then on the flip side, hearing that even if Anne is not always comfortable with the control that Sasha's had, she still really admires Sasha for how she stood up. And then the other scene, the scene with Toadie, sometimes you just need to be there for someone when they need it the most. And then Sasha's dialogue is super integral. I was just trying to be a good friend. And that gets back to what we talked about this whole time. And going back to that element of control, because no matter how malicious some of her actions would be, in the end, she was just trying to do what she thought was best for the friendship. She was trying to be a good friend. No matter how much she's messed up her Marcy and Anne's perceptions of friendship, but she's also messed up her own perception of friendship. And that conversation with Toadie is important because like he does say like sometimes you just need to be there for them. And like, and when we talk about like her future in terms of control, like being able to step back, like that's a part of it. It's like just being there for them. Like you don't need to control the situation, but being there for them can be so important. She does see that when she just gets to be on stage with them, and she didn't write the song, she didn't get to be the lead, but she was there with them and she enjoyed that. So yeah, those two scenes are just really important to recognize it.
Yeah, and I think that adds to why it'd be so important to see her not just as a leader, but as someone who's like following others and listening, just so that getting that important part of being a friend.
I hope she sees Percy and Braddock again and can show them what she learned. Christ, sobs.
So much needs to happen.
So much needs to happen. Well, anyway, thank you so much for joining me today, Siraj. I've been wanting to make this video forever, and so I'm so glad I had someone to make it with. Where can everyone who's watching find you, what you do, social media, whatever you want to plug, plug it now.
Hey, yes, you can find me on Twitter at Sajibaka, that's capital S, and then lowercase AJYBAKKA. And then you can find me on my Bookstagram, all lowercase bookbearbajwa.
As for me, you can follow me on Twitter at Ali_M_Andrews. You can check out my other content, such as my Star Wars podcast called Knights of Ren. That's primarily where I put out content nowadays. But as I'm here now, I'm still trying to put up content on this channel. And I'm hoping to still make stuff like this. But obviously, we'll see how school goes next quarter. But I'm still glad that I got to put something out before season 3B. So thank you all so much for watching. And I hope you all enjoy the angst of Amphibia as we will, because that's what I see in our future is angst. Yay! Bye!